everybody. I just watched the YouTube channel Blue Heaven, her latest uploaded video, and I was blown away again at how similar seem to be on the same wavelength. But anyways, I'm going to include the first part of that video here, which is very short, but I have additional information that came to me about the blood moon exodus or the rapture. So I'm going to add my part to it after I play the video clip from her video channel, but please do go watch it. I'll put a link in the comment section and pin it, and then I'm going to add my stuff afterwards. So here's her video firstly.
Usually in these dreams where I see two moons and I know the rapture is happening, usually it's always two full moons like this, like two actual separate physical moons. In this dream, it felt more like, even though I saw the moons just exactly like this, how you see them here, this one was here and this one was here, it seemed as though these weren't two separate moons. It felt more like it was just showing me two different phases of the moon, but they were positioned like this. So I don't think there was two of them. It was just illustrating these different phases. So this one up here, I could tell that this was the moon. I could see the physical outline of the moon. I could see the detail of like the craters and everything, but it was completely dark. It was in a completely dark phase. There was no illumination to it whatsoever, but somehow I could still just see the outline of it. So even though it was completely dark, I could tell that the moon was there. So it was the moon in a completely dark phase, and then down here I saw the moon completely full and lit up. And this is what I said in the dream. When we saw this, this is what I said. I said, the moon will be dark at midnight and bright at 1 o'clock. The bridegroom comes at the midnight hour. Okay, so I'll read that again. The moon will be dark at midnight and bright again an hour later at 1 o'clock. The bridegroom comes at the midnight hour. Okay, so I'm not going to put my own thoughts or interpretation behind that. I'm just telling you what I saw and what I said in the dream. And this is not something that I would say. But in the dream, when I said this, we just started celebrating and jumping up and down with excitement like children. And we were just like, oh my gosh, because we knew that this meant rapture and Jesus was coming. So we were just celebrating and joyful and excited. And like I said, we were just jumping up and down, just so excited, like kids on Christmas morning. And that was the dream. So I specifically asked him to give me more about the moons and the tie it has to the rapture and the dreams that he gives us. I know so many of you guys have had this dream. And this is what I got. I saw this and I said, the moon will be dark at midnight and the bridegroom comes at the midnight hour. Jesus is the bridegroom. We are the bride and he is the bridegroom, and he comes at the midnight hour. It's kind of obvious to me what that's saying, even though I'm not going to say it. But what kind of gets me is why it just decided to throw that in there. The moon will be dark at midnight and bright at 1 o'clock. That's kind of random to me. I don't know. So I just wanted to share this with you guys and see what you guys think. And that's all I have for now. So, all right, bye.
So here she sees two orbs, one over the other. One is a dark orb over a yellow-colored or bright orb. And what she said in the dream was the moon will be dark at midnight and bright again at 1 o'clock. And the bridegroom will come in the midnight hour, which it's not. She keeps stating that she has no idea what these things are, and that's why she was seeking out, well, what does this mean? What is that dark orb? Is it a dark moon, or a dead moon, or a fully waned moon, or is it something else? This is my take on it. The moon will be dark at midnight. That is your dark orb. That is over the other orb. That is the top orb. And it's the moon being dark at midnight. It doesn't mean the moon is fully waned at 0% illumination. That, I believe, is a lunar eclipse. Why do I believe that? Because an hour later, it's a full moon. You don't have a fully waned moon, and an hour later, it's a full moon. That's impossible. You can only have a waned moon, and then 2 weeks later, you can have a full moon. That's 2 weeks. But according to what she said, the moon will be dark at midnight and bright again at 1 o'clock. Didn't say 1 o'clock a.m. or p.m., just at 1 o'clock. So just in her narrative, she is describing a lunar eclipse. And like I said, the top moon is when it's eclipsed. The bottom moon is when it comes out of the eclipse and it's bright again. Now, the interesting thing, and this is what ties it all in, is that if you go look at that full super blood moon on May 16th, and you look at the time when it is still dark, still eclipsed in its respective time zone, which is right over kind of the western side of South America, that happens at midnight, and it's bright again at 1 o'clock. Exactly what she said in the dream. She spoke this out. That fact alone identifies a very specific blood moon lunar eclipse. The only one I could find going back a couple of years, because she had that dream about a year and a half ago, to the year 2030, the only lunar eclipse where in its time zone, the moon is dark at midnight, completely dark, and bright again at 1 o'clock, is the moon we've been talking about, the super blood moon of May 16th, 2022. And she even said, I could see the outline of the moon, I could see the craters and stuff like that.
So the animation that he showed for the lunar eclipse that's coming up in a few days was over Western South America. But if you look at the same time zone for the United States, it ends up being Central Daylight Time, so the Midwest. So that got me to thinking with the blood moon exodus, which is what it is, and also the Passover meal, that would indicate Egypt, and more specifically, Cairo, Egypt. So I'm only going to briefly touch on this, but if you do a comparison of where the Israelites exited Egypt during the Passover Exodus, that was out of the land of Goshen, but in particular, if you look at it, it's still barren. So this is a map of Egypt. So if you look at the area of which they exited, where the 10 plagues occurred, it's still barren there to this day. And this is a map of Egypt. But if you superimpose it with the United States, it is very similar to Canada, like the Great Lakes region, the United States, and then Mexico here. So I thought this gave me an indication that the area of which they exited out of and being is Central Daylight Time. So that revelation, plus the revelation that came to me with the 2 total solar eclipses that crossed the United States, it goes through that intersecting region right here, which is called Cairo, Illinois, and that area that it crisscrosses, intersects, is Little Egypt. So if you zoom into that area, highlighted here in black, of which the total solar eclipses will crisscross, one already occurring on August 21st, 2017. The next one will be on April 8th, 2024. The closest city you can get to that intersecting point is Carbondale, Illinois, but outside of that is Little Egypt. So I'll only touch on this part, but the intersection of the next American total solar eclipse will intersect in Cairo, Illinois, which is also called Little Egypt. You can go look that up yourselves. And the next one will be on April 8th, 2024, and that's that intersecting point between the 2 total solar eclipses. So with that information and the Exodus and the Passover and the man going on a long journey, this being the second Passover, but even if you think it's the first, it's still either the first or second Passover. I think it's splitting hairs on that point, but so I wanted to see the same total lunar eclipse or blood moon animation that was shown in Blue Heaven's video, but for Cairo, Illinois. But the closest that it will allow on timeanddate.com is Carbondale, Illinois, which is an hour due north of Cairo, Illinois. But they are exactly in the same time zone and basically almost in the same geographic location. So I'll show the animation instead for Carbondale, Illinois. So here's the part of that lady's dream in which the blood moon is at its fullest, and then right here at the Earth's umbra, it starts to conclude, and that takes a full hour before it goes back to clearing and the full moon is shown again, according to her dream. So looking at the time and the phase, that occurs at 11:53 p.m. and it's towards the time when the total eclipse blood moon ends, and then an hour later, so an hour and 2 minutes, it's back to a partial eclipse, but it appears as a full moon again to the eye. So this is the time of the midnight cry, which is in Central Daylight Time. Again, this is for Carbondale, Illinois, which is the closest to Cairo, Illinois. But they're lined up perfectly, almost in the same longitude. And so they're virtually, you might as well call it the same. So I think the blood moon exodus and possible rapture, and I'm just saying possible, could occur exactly like it did when the Israelites had the mass exodus out of the land of Ramesses. So if you read all of Exodus 12, which I won't go through here, they had the Passover meal, and then they had the 10th plague in which Pharaoh let all the children go, and then with the Exodus, Moses and Aaron by night, so possibly midnight, like the midnight cry, the people left out of the land of Egypt, and they made haste out of the land of Egypt, and the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Sukkot. And Sukkot is the same as tabernacles, which is God dwelling with us, or Emmanuel, God with us. So I think this upcoming lunar eclipse is very important and a very, very high watch, as it's playing out as a type and shadow of when the children of Israel journeyed from the land of Ramesses to Sukkot by night after the Passover meal at night. So just like the midnight cry. So I would take this as one of the most urgent high watches, plus it being possibly the second Passover in which a man comes from a long journey. He can celebrate the second Passover. So I think this is totally plain identical to the Exodus and the Passover meal, and this being a total lunar eclipse blood moon, of which they also put blood over the lentils so that the death angel would pass over their houses. And so this has the blood moon redemption, along with it being the second Passover, in my opinion, of which a man on a long journey returns and can celebrate the second Passover. And then they make haste at night after the midnight cry. The children of Israel journeyed to Ramesses, to Sukkot, which means God dwelling with us, or Emmanuel, God with us. So please take this as a high watch warning and pray on this, be as Bereans, but I'm taking this exceptionally serious. And finally, I believe this is the nail in the coffin, although you do not have to agree. But if you compare the region of Ramesses, the region of the Exodus, and this is a map of Egypt, which is still barren where the 10 plagues occurred to this day, it looks just like Canada, the United States, and then Mexico. And if you put it side by side comparison to this upcoming total lunar eclipse with the darkest pink here or dark rose is the greatest eclipse. But comparing the United States over here to the Exodus region out of Ramesses, they look remarkably similar. So please be as Bereans, as I said, test this information. You don't have to agree with me, but I think this is the most highest possible rapture watch you could possibly have, although it may not occur, but I think it bears a lot of watching, at least, if anything, for the midnight cry. So I believe that the Lord is playing this out as a type and shadow of what occurred during the actual exodus out of Egypt, and then having a blood moon, which is what they put over the lintels of their houses so that the death angel would pass over, as Dr. Barriot says so eloquently, would pass over their houses. And then they went out of the land of Ramesses by night into the land of Sukkot, which means God dwells with us, which is identical to the meaning of Emmanuel, God with us. And so please, please, please be as Bereans. Test this, but I do think this bears very high watch, and it is playing out as an identical type and shadow of both the Passover, the second Passover, and the Exodus by night. So I hope this has been a blessing to you. Please take warning. I want to get this out quickly, and so it's a little bit rough around the edges. I did a little editing, but not much, as I want to get it out quickly. So anyways, I hope this is a blessing to you, and please watch the total lunar eclipse blood moon on the 15th through the 16th, depending on your location. But please watch for the times based on your location, because standard daylight time is not the same for other locations. So, all right, so I'll conclude from here, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.